Hi, I'm Tim. Welcome to our channel, and thanks for logging on. Today, we're discussing a gentle giant of the deep. It's the Omega Seamaster Ploprof Professionnel, the Ploprof 1200m in titanium grade 5. You can see this master chronometer titanium grade 5 extreme dive watch and purchase it on our website. Subscribe to our YouTube channel if you enjoy these videos, and please click on the card in the upper right hand corner of the screen at any time during this video to see our full sales listing for this watch with additional accessories included in the sale, high resolution images for your desktop, and naturally complete pricing details for this Ploprof 1200m. Of course, the watch references the historic 1970s Seamaster 600, but in so many ways, it parallels that watch. It's more wearable than you imagine. It's more compact than you imagine. It's perhaps even a little bit smarter than you imagine, as it appears to accomplish its purpose by brute force, but the detail refinements surprise and delight. This is a watch that you can actually wear, yes, every day. I've made some controversial statements in the past about the wearability of these, always erring on the side of charity, saying this is a wearable watch and not a novelty. I think people originally looked at this watch the way they looked at the IWC Big Pilot, thinking that's a weekend watch, that's an occasional watch, and that's only a watch for huge wrists. This is an everyday watch for any wrist, and my 16cm wrist proves the point. Why? Because the lug-to-lug measurement on this watch, which is 48mm across the wrist, is only about 3.5mm farther than you'd see on a 36mm Rolex Datejust. That's right, this watch is only 48mm lug-to-lug, which puts it in the same category as a lot of largish reversos from JLC. Now, the monster dimension of this watch is from 9 to 3, and if you measure it from extremity to extremity down the wrist, yes, it's going to be 55mm, but it sits compact side to side, and it uses the length of your wrist to its advantage. Everything from the crown mechanism to the bezel release system has been located longitudinally on the wrist. It's as smart now as it was in 1970. Now, you can also note that the watch can't pull off a complete magic trick, as there is quite a bit of girth. The watch is 18.4mm thick, which means it's solidly into the territory occupied by, for example, the Rolex Deep Sea Sea Dweller or Omega's own Seamaster Diver 300m Co-Axial chronograph. The watch, however, is light, as the bracelet is grade 2 titanium and the case is grade 5. Now, you can see on my 16cm circumference wrist, I have so much clearance at the edge of my wrist that that bracelet is actually flaring out. So it's light on the wrist, it's compact side to side. How small a wrist can get away with this? I'm going to venture to say if you have a 14.5cm circumference wrist, this thing's certainly not going to overlap the edge of your wrists. 48 lug-to-lug doesn't lie, and it wears that way because, as you can see, the wonderfully flexible and comfortable mesh bracelet, which Omega somewhat cheekily dubs the shark-proof bracelet, it pulls straight down, and it's a standard 24mm lug spacing. So if you want to throw your favorite bracelet or strap on that, if it's 24mm, again, you can just use a standard strap. There's nothing exotic here. There's nothing proprietary about that lug junction. And the bracelet can even pull inward a little bit, so flexible is it for a really small wrist. So this is a wearable watch. Now, the bracelet also has plenty of gaps for aeration. There's no concern about ventilating the wrist on a hot day with this. Also, because the links are so small, it feels more like a piece of silken fabric than a link of metal. You'll also note that the chain connects to one of Omega's most impressive clasps, and I'm going to go out and say this is Omega's most impressive clasp, period. You can see the image of the hippocampus or the seahorse and the quite appropriate inscription, Seamaster Professional. It is that. It's also thoughtfully designed. An inch of adjustment, so about 25mm for those using the SI, and then you've got another roughly inch or 25mm for a total of about 50mm of adjustment built in. You have the incremental slider, which lets you make small adjustments, and then you have the extension. You could wear this thing over a spacesuit, never mind a dry suit. The finish of the case is handsome, and now that we're done with the wrist shots, we can get as close as we like to it, appreciate it. It's a handsome satin finish that's unconventionally vertically grained. As you can see, there's no longitudinal grain. The blocky geometric form of the case is accentuated by the fact that the satin is grained vertically from top to bottom, and then there are some small hairline bevels that act as jewelry, accenting They're part of a composition, and a clever composition of metal finishes. Grade 5 titanium, in my experience, is more scratch resistant than most steels. Are there some extreme steels out there? Yes. Bremont does some face hardening with heat, so does Sin, but apples to apples, you're going to find that grade 5 tie holds its satin or polished finish and resists scratches and scuffs better than conventional 316 low carbon steel. So you've got toughness as well as lightness, and you have those handsome highlights. Also along the bezel, as you'll note, the intermediate satin finish and then the polished outer knurled components. So the raised and textured portions of the bezel are of high polish to stand out. There is a little bit of a quirk factor here. The watch is full of it, but it's all logical and serves the purpose of an extreme sports watch. You have a bidirectional bezel. You can move it in either direction. A pusher on the flank of the case at 3 o'clock, or I should say probably more like 1:30, releases the bezel and lets you line it up. By the way, the bezel is fully loomed. There will be a loom shot at the end of this video, and it will be spectacular. The bezel is fully loomed, so you're going to have no trouble with your reference points. The large minute hand can be lined up with the index, and then you can trace it 0 to 60 minutes. I've always said a dive bezel is the best chronograph ever made. First of all, most chronographs only have a 30-minute register. This gives you 60, and it's easier to trace that one huge hand radially when time is truly scarce and you only have moments to glance at the wrist. Those furtive glances yield comprehension more often when you're reading a radial scale of a huge hand against giant numerals and indices than when you're looking at a tiny subdial. I always used my dive bezel during my college years for quickly glancing to check the time remaining in tests. Now, it's a high quality dial. It is a white lacquer, so it has a glossiness to it. This watch is the 2015 model. So in 2015, the watch was redesigned in many respects. It was reissued in 2009 in the case size you see here, but in steel with the caliber 8500 and a solid case back. This one has a display case back. The 2009 model also had a date window. This one, for you purists out there, has no date. You get clarity and balance as a result with a handsome orange, white, and blue combination. All indices applied. Legibility is superb, and the crown is a little bit unusual in its function, but it gives you all the same functionality as a conventional Omega screw-down crown. First, you thread it out. It has protection like nothing else in the Omega catalog. As full, complete, and encompassing as the device protecting the crown on a Panerai, this crown guard is not messing around. Now you unscrew the crown, and then you can actuate the hacking and the time zone functions. Time zone allows the watch to keep running. So you can see the seconds hand continues to advance, so does the minute hand. This is great if you're jumping forward or backward across time zones when traveling. Hacking comes into effect when you pull the crown to extremity. By the way, the crown is immense, and the knurling is wonderfully chunky. It's a pleasure to operate. Now you can set everything in sync. And of course, you screw it back down, and there is a telescoping quality to the crown guard that moves up and down with the crown through its travel. Turn the watch over, and now you can see the Master Chronometer Co-Axial Caliper 8912, the main event. And again, the display case back being one of the innovations of the latest generation of Ploprofs. Twin mainspring barrels, 60-hour power reserve, automatic winding, dual anchored balance bridge, so you can see a screw on both sides, a full bridge supporting the balance, and a free sprung index. Those two features make it shock resistant. A silicone hairspring, that makes it amagnetic. And then you have the Métas chronometer standard, which is something new for Omega, still relatively recent. It's a fully cased up standard of the watch's resistances, power reserve, winding efficiency, and chronometric precision that surpasses the COSC, which itself is based on the international ISO 3159 chronometer standard. But the COSC is only a test of the movement. It isn't a test of the full watch. Moreover, it isn't a test of the resistances of any portion of the watch. The Métas standard, developed with the Swiss government, gives you that. So this is Omega holding itself to a higher standard. Is there a little bit of marketing gimmickry about it? Yes, there is, but I've also run these watches on timing devices, and on chronoscopes I've seen them run 1/3 of a second per day. So it's not just marketing, there's real engineering going on here. It beats away at the quirky coaxial rate of 25,200 vibrations per hour, and the coaxial escapement, for those of you who might be experiencing this for the first time, is a multi-level escapement featuring an unconventional anchor and an unconventional escape wheel, because there are actually two escape wheels on a common spindle being indexed by several levels of pallet stones. It's called the coaxial because you have those escapements operating on the same spindle axis but on different levels adjacent to each other. And it was invented by an independent watchmaker named George Daniels, and he spent years trying to sell it to different brands. Finally, Omega during the 90s had the courage to take it up and attempt it on production watches. Initially it was a special edition. Initially there were some durability issues, but in time, especially with the 8000 series movements and the 9000 series chronographs, Omega finally tamed the beast, achieving all the original aims of Daniels, so timing stability in the short term, timing stability in the long term, precision, and reduced maintenance requirements. Plus you also have a handsome finish about this movement. It's a smooth bidirectional winder, so those twin mainspring barrels, which give more even torque throughout the wind than a single mainspring barrel, are underneath a bridge with a spiral arabesque Côte de Genève rather than linear or circular, and all the screw heads are blackened rather than blued or polished, so some unique styling signatures of these Omega coaxial calibers. A handsome watch, a versatile watch, and yes, a wearable watch. It's a technical masterstroke, inside and out. Ergonomically, it's a little bit of a miracle, but take my word for it, this is one you can pull off even on a small wrist. I would say it's more wearable than the 44mm Diver 300s and virtually any Planet Ocean. See it and decide for yourself on our website. And we're back with the Ploprof, the Seamaster Professional 1200m Plongeur Professionnel. This is a watch with a fully loomed ceramic bezel, and it actually has a wonderful bidirectional action that's enabled by a plunger that you press down, and then you can actually move the bezel in either direction. The bezel is fully loomed, and you have contrasting luminescence with the pearl of the bezel being green and the minute hand likewise. You'll also note it has a dwarf hour hand, so you can easily distinguish which one is minutes. Now you have a 0 to 60 minute countdown timer, legible in any light. See it by the light of day in grade 5 titanium with white lacquered dial on our website.